Hello and welcome to Mark My Words. So the budget, we saw the stuff about national insurance and NI cut from 8 to 6. I think this is sort of tinkering around the edges. I'm not sure it's going to make a massive amount of difference. The first change of note was the abolishing of multiple dwellings relief in relation to stamp duty. We used to be able to, if you've got a block of flats, or maybe you were buying a whole row of houses, you used to be able to take the average value of the property you were buying, and that would just fit into a certain band of stamp duty. That has been removed. I must say, a lot of the time when I was purchasing in that way, I would actually opt for commercial rate of stamp duty anyway. And I suppose, actually, was I buying blocks of flats? No, I was buying commercial buildings to develop into blocks of flats. But it doesn't suddenly mean that because you're buying a block of flats or lots of houses and the overall value is, say, 3 million, you've suddenly got to pay 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% stamp duty, as you would if you bought a house of, say, 10 million, because you can opt for the commercial rates of stamp duty. So often you'll get it into the 3, 4, 5% range, rather than sort of anywhere up to 10% if it was just on the normal residential rate. So I'm not sure this is as big a change as some are stating. I think most of us, or a lot of us, were using the commercial regime anyway. Interestingly, they've reduced the capital gains tax rate on residential properties from 28% to 24%. Maybe that is to encourage landlords to sell, maybe single landlords they're not so keen on anymore, Section 24, etc. Again, is it going to make that much difference? Probably not. The Chancellor says he's going to raise more money through this. Many of you will know the Laffer curve. As you reduce tax rates, often the amount of tax that you take increases. Sounds a little bit strange and maybe politically not that popular to the masses, but that's the reality with lots and lots of taxes. VAT threshold has gone up to 90,000. Well, needed to do that a long time ago. Inflation tells us that. Definitely of interest is this new British ISA or ISA allowance of £5,000 that relates to shares which you buy in British companies. I always invest my ISA every year. This is another £5,000 on top of the normal 20, and I think the money has got to go into British companies, so British equities. Can't see how that's a bad thing. Our stock market has been languishing, not performing for a long time now. The international markets have really turned off UK equities, not just because of Brexit as it was initially sort of explained. I think the markets see our companies as nowhere near as efficient, not able to grow as much as especially American shares, and even European shares probably do better than the UK FTSE. Lots of companies have decided to list elsewhere, so I suppose this is the Chancellor trying to get more money in. But of course, any shares that you buy within an ISA, there's no capital gains tax on those shares and no income tax on the dividends that you receive. So not a lot of money, but you know, it's there and you should utilise it. So SA is changing quite a lot. Serviced accommodation, Airbnb. They're abolishing the furnished holiday lettings regime. So you're not going to be able to claim capital allowances on serviced accommodation. I think this was always coming, but that's quite a big deal. You used to be able to claim something like 20% of the purchase price of the property and then offset that against all of the income. You're not going to be able to do that at all. And in addition to that, they're going to bring it within the remit of Section 24, which means if you own it in your own name, you're probably only going to be able to offset up to about half of the mortgage interest against the rent, which seems pretty unfair. It's draconian, but I think it was always likely to happen. There's been a huge gap between serviced accommodation units and normal sort of long-term rental units, and I suppose they're closing that gap, but it is more of the same, just red tape, tinkering. Some of these properties over the medium term will probably come back into the private rented sector, which does provide more for tenants, so it may control rents a bit, but in addition, what they say they're going to do is require planning consent in a lot of areas. There's going to be a permitted development rights regime applied to this, so you will have permitted development rights in lots of areas to operate your flat or house that wasn't serviced accommodation previously. You're going to be able to do that without planning permission in lots of areas, but in some areas, and I suspect these will be the ones on the coast and the areas where there's lots and lots of holiday makers, they're going to stop you doing that unless you apply for planning consent, and then I guess they'll refuse the planning consent. So it is going to act as a control on these properties. People who've already got them, there's a big benefit there because they're going to be able to carry on. I suppose they'd have grandfather rights. The use that they'd established prior to this change will just continue and they won't have to apply for planning consent. They will be subject to Section 24 though, won't be able to offset all the mortgage interest if it's in their own name, fine if it's in a limited company, and I think they also are not going to be able to claim any unused capital allowances. I suspect that will come to an end. They may be able to make retrospective claims, I'm unsure about that, but any new purchases, it will be finished. Other changes, this sort of non-dom status is changing, or they're abolishing it. I'm not sure this is going to make much difference at all. These are just people that they've been based in this country up to a certain length of time, and really it just relates to income obtained overseas. Historically, they've been able to keep their cash overseas, income overseas, and not pay UK income tax on it, but this will mean that their worldwide income, these people will be brought under the umbrella of sort of UK taxation, especially income tax. I don't think there's many of these people. I think there's a few of them in London. Often they're expatriates. So is it going to change that much? Probably not. It might push a few of them away. London generally has suffered. Brexit, various other things has pushed people away. I suspect this pushes some more money away and probably doesn't raise very much. It's just politically popular. I'm not sure that's necessarily a reason to do it, but that's what the government seem to like to do. I hope you've got value from that news roundup, a little bit on the budget there and various other things that the government are doing. I have been Mark Homer for Mark My Words.